Oh, dear Victor God, I could be a better, some ways I could be a better friend for China than you because even though you're a brilliant guy, in other words, and the people who are for a better friend for our leaders, president slash chief, no, here and there, our histories are told wrong. All true, with those exceptions. That's used to screen it. Had anyone been honest with principal treatments regarding the nature of debate, even with yin yang, how we have black people as whites of eyes would not be left out from that. How a breaching method had reassigned black people as whites of eyes, what it communicates when nature is not only nature as criminal insidiousness, criminally foreign influence slash hypercriminally foreign influence. And that's not a formula. I'm not a lawyer, but lawyers all sides of criminal and civil cases. Originally and still, the suits and ties counter's exceptions are being and have been used remotely criminally foreign influence. Tactically, delusions are out blaming other things, others, ourselves for what a hyper foreign thing caused. A hyper archetypal criminal enterprise, if you will. A breaching method, a human fact cheating nature breaching method. A predicate acts with facts method. Now wire crime methods, digital crime methods. Weathersfield police faked conversations with me when I was a kid. Weathersfield, Connecticut, in America, when I was a kid and when I was an adult. Now they have some intercultural and intracultural people involved with all kinds of natures of organized crimes, including with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. This is about the identity theft, fraud, slander method, three ways manifest, because nature was demonstrating it. And a breaching method knew that nature was going to demonstrate to everyone. Look, northern colonies and southern colonies, more than 13 before America's founders were even born. You guys all have non-distinctly the same thing hurting you guys. See, it was sickly distinctly hurting Native Americans, sickly distinctly helping them, sickly distinctly hurting the colonist differences, male, female, age. This is multi-front against every name of the human species body. Keeps suits and ties, counters, exceptions, speaking about economies, using isms, and the nature of debate, forcing self-by use of those principal treatments that are criminal insidiousness at the basic ages. From little kids could understand what criminal foreign influence is. They could even understand what criminal foreign influence is slash hyper criminally foreign influence is, because they could understand how sickly distinctly, but also non-distinctly, northern colonies and southern colonies were the possessions of other countries, and nobody had free speech. America's founders had to leave that to be declassified for themselves and for us. But the other countries, like in other words, you were talking about American history, and with Abraham Lincoln and the states, you're leaving out and replacing how too China was here, and I believe there were people from Russia here too before America's founders were even born. We have suburbs that were designed for torture, extortion, slavery, and and suburban slash urban, designed to unfold that way, and urban designed to fold that way. Everyone needing food from other systems, from a Britain, not only other systems, but other systems designed to keep all that to hide behind and through by the hyperforeign. It's concentrated with psychiatry, criminally foreign influence, tactic, delusions, rot readings of American history. And they use their own cultural differences, other people's, in at location slash S. There are people from Pakistan involved with the corner of Southstein Highway and Turat Highway and Town Line Drive. And there are senators involved too with more World Trade Center predicate acts. And Channel 3 News, WFSB, for example, in Connecticut, they attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others about the World Trade Center attack, while they were forcing a principal child abuser and medical and sexual offenders of kids, criminally foreign influence, as one's personally and foreign and domestic, personally and professionally involved with multiple courts, family members, and intimate ties. Like New Britain Superior Court has a bunch of people involved, even with Facebook. And these are people personally involved with Facebook and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-dependents and their family members and kids. All kinds of fake transcripts at Hartford Hospital. See, we have what's hard or easy. We have easy answers. And where they are hard, and where they appear to be hard, all I have to do is follow mandated law. Victor Branch putting me in fake transcripts at the Wethersfield police station as a kid and then as an adult. And I still can't get the Interbranch on paper since I was a kid. They have collusions with all natures of crime scenes. This breaching method uses and already used all sides of criminal and civil cases. Their lawyers, their sources, their family members, the conjunctions to them, who it is, the difference of that. The same thing with the courts, the same thing with the Interbranch family members, conjunctions to them and to that. At the same time, even when they're not in the cases, and no matter what case it's about, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, names next to body dumping spots, next to campuses kept needing to hide the same lie progressions. Verified and further things they're told. Not one identity of hierarchy has missed how you guys were everyone, A through Z, of the human species body of individual bodies. We came through hyper-criminally foreign influence campuses and exceptions. It uses the difference too, but everything it uses is when we're debating, when people went in human debates, the quality of debate, the nature of debate has stayed incapable of affording what we have hyper-evidentially to answer our questions, like black people's rights of eyes, and a breaching method that reassigned when nature communicates, when nature is not criminal and seasonous, and had everyone roll sensing if anyone wasn't. And how that worked is because there were internationally monitored conversations. There were all kinds of organized crimes and predicate acts methods against every single human difference, therefore against everyone, sickly, distinctly in layers of roles with the breaching method that no one wanted roles with, since before modern religious messengers were born. To speak of religion, because religion is in the, I put the link to the video. And two, with the isms like communism, socialism, capitalism, the nature of debate, that I can't defend that and not afford to self-value. Principles that are only being, validated by everybody because of how the breaching method measures and maintains self-value roles with what our founders communicated for us to communicate for themselves, which is one thing they communicated for us to understand, is that the only name we know of them was James Madison, because none of them had free speech. None of the people they counter-extorted. You say, oh, how was that a democracy if you have to counter-extort and force the people? Because everyone was fact-human nature, tortured, extorted, and enslaved. To keep, know how we had a leader of America, a president/chief, Kennedy, and he was assassinated. And there was a book depository involved with it. Now, the book depositories never stopped being involved with the difference of how the federal voices to defend education, no matter what country it's in. But in America, that breaching method was hyper sophistication here first. This breaching method, even though it's declassified, our founders did not have free speech. They had to leave slavery entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies. That's not something that someone votes on if you're capable of defending the Constitution unabridged. And see, they were not. Well, but they hadn't been signing it until there were reasons because everyone had to hide their actual motivations, and they had to pretend that everyone had to pretend had free speech to an extent, otherwise be sensed by everyone around them. All identities of sophistication were reliant, incapable more and more of affording short words with convictions proper by the identity the sciences share. We have a human species body of individual bodies. And there are other species bodies with individual bodies with all group differences generated by the same one that's generating all these different species bodies so we can discern its own. It is not us nor them, but it is all things anyway. It's like the parts of everyone's body is a semi-nature relationship to their complete identity. And it's exactly this way as the species unity, which is simultaneously where independence is forced, values equally and increasingly as a quality of diffusion where it makes more of itself through itself. English and the other ancient languages are more probably and demonstrably having been revealed to be taught this way. Appreciating how it is functional too, how it is hyper invisible, distinct from how it is invisible but still discernible. I don't even have to know how to speak Chinese. The parts of speech are about the invisible but still discernible. For example, the subject. Any subject we could appreciate, finite, individual, grouped, or simultaneous to whatever extent, even if it's increasing and simultaneous. There's always what is greater than it and more finite than it, and with active relativity to it, to those subjects, or to that individual subject that we could discern. And with appreciation of it, how it is manifest that way, because the rest of the complete identity of all space/existence that doesn't fit with the part we could discern, or with this temporary/lasting space nature completely, where we could discern it as one identity of value progression. Like how it is that which there is one identity of value progression generating all species bodies and the group differences of the individual species bodies of individual bodies. In other words, an individual identity of value progression is being demonstrated to us. And then the parts of itself are distinctly hyper invisible but still discernible. So, but with how we could appreciate subjects individually grouped together, there's a hyper invisible but still discernible. And with English grammar, for example, why and how we need to appreciate more than one word for a verb. The parts of speech, again, they are about the invisible but still discernible, / hyper invisible but still discernible. And this is where and how we could discern the same body of value progression that is generating species value, as why and how they have a present participle and a past participle, for example, which are names hyperadditional for a verb. A predicate is also a name for a verb, a main verb. You say, well, what's the point of that? Because now we're the parts of speech, again, they're invisible but still discernible. But now we're why and how, what they're together demonstrating, even if they're not being used together in a sentence, we are being shown the identity of the hyper invisible but still discernible in the parts of itself. So there's a present participle and the past participle, but there's no future participle, because the future is hyper invisible but still discernible distinctly, like the seasons. We know that we don't even know each other, but we know each other. We know about the seasons and their value to an extent, even if they never got here again. It is only their only increasing value, and they share an identity. Oh, that's theory. See, we're offensively, the scientists were shown that will accept theory. See, everyone to be manners and polite, even though, and then the next, those are the principles right there. See, but everyone came through campuses that had other communicative founders than they actually communicated. This I read that we are not supposed to put words in the mouth of Mao Zedong. And for example, the beginning of the Old Testament, it says, because it says only defend right here, where the names of the people of the sciences will come together, and the part that comes before it. And this is before the part with the tree of life, tree of knowledge of good and evil, Adam and Eve, and all those things that are debatable and the people debate about. And no, I never even heard anyone else speak about it. That's all after the part that says only defend right here, where the names of the people of the sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. Also, the beginning of the Quran, too. It says All that matters is if one is honest, with them, with themselves and with others about are they going to use the name Allah or not for the name of that identity of value / value progression generating the species bodies, for example, of the identity of all space / existence as a scientific value with communications and science and needs imposed by a hyperforeign human back-achieving nature breaching method to not play games and be honest with the science, because but that's unnatural. Only natural as criminal insidiousness nature. The impositions on everyone to have to react to that. This breaching method consciously, there are proofs. It forced, checked, hurt, and persuaded the phenomenon of countries' names that could only be operated by locations, areas, and states. It knew it was going to get in trouble unless it did something preemptively to get people to blame other things for others themselves for what the breaching method did. And then have those people properly counter that, but improperly not realizing the breaching method did that and get locked into defending that anyway syntactically and not realizing more and more the breaching method could and did and is keeping them more and more incapable of affording short words, appreciated proper with convictions. Therefore, their protraction, forget about it. So they change and fake what people say. They get away with this by valuing and self-valuing, having been fake things put in databases. The value of all truths used for lies. There is spying here and there, specifically to have here and there. Everyone uses using names as names through and out of systems tactically ulterior from the human species body of individual bodies, a different species from the other different species bodies. And we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time, and there are exceptions. Some people apparently have black pupils and black halo part. So they only have the whites of eyes. I mean, they only have the same color eyes as us. But the point is that we are being shown about difference. We are being communicated to about the difference by the identity of all space / existence itself. And we still have that, and that's claimed theory and gotten away with. So there's a difference. There are criminal insidious natures of positive values that have only been known to be used, and everyone is depending. Well, that's my own motivation. The breaching method knew that everyone would do that. The hyperforeign speak about their motivations, leaving itself out. Whenever anyone speaks about slavery and leaves out how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, and a breaching method that was entrenched before America's founders were even born, they communicated about that. But our own campuses have collusion /S, and they have delusions, but they're juxtaposed with actual collusion /S. And the hyperforeign shows that, it just keeps names calling, saying or doing whatever, positive or negative, flattery, whatever, just to keep that quality of fact-achieving nature, criminally foreign influence, criminal insidious nature / hyper-criminal insidious nature, if you will. I'm not a lawyer. The names of the people of the sciences are abridged, victims / hyper victims. That's what forgiveness is, not to give up, but not to leave out guilt. Assignments when trying to overcome all this and what it causes and keeps without blaming the breaching method. Because the breaching method was replaced right from the communications of our founders. Even though I don't know exactly what Mao Zedong said, there was already entrenched. There were clearer than day. The torture, extortion, fact-achieving nature, slavery method. Before world wars, before the Civil War, James Madison is the only, we were directed to understand James Madison as our founder, the only one we know the name of. And then they went and got George Washington counter-extorted and agreeing to counter-extort the rest of the founders. And George Washington himself directed us to be honest about his extortion. And these are people rolls with slavery that was left in northern colonies and southern colonies. They wanted nothing to do with that. They wanted everyone to understand about the torture, extortion, slavery method, the hyperform that non-distinctly had northern colonies and southern colonies set up and rolls with such. See, but we're not supposed to separate these subjects. So there's a breaching method in the room with names A through Z that could only be operated by locations, areas, and states names. So this is what we're still being charged for things. The suburbs were designed tactically to nature to cause negative value nature progression. Acts in natures while being landscape theater, not realizing because everyone had already been on value nature systems tactical ulterior from the one that is also positive onto itself, or it demonstrates. But see, this breaching method employed use of those demonstrations, where it employed roles with those forcing those demonstrations to blame not other things, others, ourselves. Just like where we have black people's whites of eyes forced left out, how that's gotten away with, forced left out of subject treatments like slavery. We have forced how the breaching method forced our founders to roles with that. They were factory nature enslaved themselves, therefore physically, and they didn't have free speech. Everyone had to hide their motivations for why all of a sudden there's a people saying they're coming with a brand new country. There were multiple countries that wasn't just England, and they shared roles with internationally monitored conversations. They had time collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the three branches of government. There's a witch trials place. They're one of the founding locations in Connecticut, in Old Wethersfield, Connecticut, right next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Then and now, they're still communicating other than with our founders, than with George Washington, and what James Madison really communicated for them to understand about those places. In other words, people make the subject treatments. What's the witch trials about? Oh, it's the only subject. They're sensing for the breaching method. You don't leave out how there were slavery laws. You'll and the sustained against Native Americans. There are proofs that Native Americans helped and were partially behind James Madison's plan, and showed them how to count and who to counter as key figures inside more than 13 colonies that were entrenched. But we have what our founders communicated replaced right through our schools. It has time collusions. There are styles pretending other, that as a nature pretending other too, which not by accident has time collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and the difference of the adults in their families or the kids in their families involved with their sense and sensibilities and motivations, narratives, and natures. And it's not literally, it's not, in other words, but psychiatry, excuse me, is clearer than day. Criminally pointable tactical delusions wrought, readings of statutes and precedents in books, like the religious books, because they force drugs on people, saying people speaking about crimes. They're creating, in other words, since right through world wars, they had collusions. How do you bring up? They don't even have the Civil War understood. James Madison's plan forced the Civil War. It forced us to try to get the Constitution unabridged and appreciate why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them, and why and how economies voices. You know, you guys are missing how the suburbs are designed tactically denatured, and nature will only continue to demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And the breaching method needs that, because that's what enables people to blame things. It makes people have to act like knaves. because more and more every individual voice, even if it's a leader, but everyone behind them, they're forced to entertain systems tactile from what we are actually. The suburbs are designed to actually. Who wants to debate that the cities across the world are? Who wants to pretend they're not denatured? They're going to have inherent to, active to, progressive to. Their logic demonstration /s of the same thing. Nature shows us how to answer our questions, how to reveal evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. Yin Yang and Alpha and Omega, more probably and possibly revealed to be taught together by ancients who were led by the hyper invisible. How nature shows us it is functional, how it is hyper invisible but still discernible. Its system, when someone's trying to use systems tactical terrier. See, more and more it's becoming difficult to discern by the entire species body because we've only remembered being systems tactical terrier from its own. In other words, or we have been sensed relative to it. This breaching method, that's what happens when someone tries to use. That's hyper-evidential. We have black people's white survive. We have means for little kids to discern that the experts are fake. Integrity. As collusion /s too. Little kids. See, we should build where they were capable of speaking when they're little kids in the cities. They're capable right then of understanding criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, or ground below their feet. And the kids and the adults want to help them instantly. But instead, those kids and adults are sensed. They're not collusions with the three branches of government and the intelligence tied to them. A through Z countries, too. Like with psychiatry, though. Concentrated. This is the problem. We have to purge. Plus, they have more natures and methods of organized crimes. Right there. Right where we're supposed to be healthcare and real medicine. That's part of the problem. They have more than we need. We have more scams than we have streets in our cities and houses on them. We are in a semi-ancient trap. In other words, people can't even have a legitimate debate regarding if they want to deny that it's plausible and demonstrable. That is more probable and practical for yin yang and for alpha and omega to be taught together. And the proper way of doing that, I didn't read it, but alpha is in the beginning, in the word alphabet for a reason. And O comes conveniently right after N, which is and M and N. N is neutrality. See, M is mother. Mother is omega, but distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. We are distinct from the other species bodies. We are non-distinct from them too, but we are simultaneous with them. But also for that further distinct identity of simultaneous nature, the hyper-simultaneous nature. That which is functional, being hyper-invisible, but still discernible. And again, the parts of itself come with its with where and how we can discern its individual identity of value progression being generated, being projected to us. But where we can discern is we have it replaced, like that which, like the value of capitalism and simultaneously the value of communism or of socialism. See, because there are uses of the isms. There are proofs that pantheism was revealed. A part of a teaching method with the campus is still criminally foreign influence tactical delusion of the republic for which we stand, which also worked with exception nature, to be and to stay being led by. How it is functional too, but being hyper invisible but still discernible. Like we could detect if the smallest fiber, if people are just having black people's whites of eyes. And that left out from replaced from the subject too. We could discern it being replaced. Where subject treatments are made, like with them, not just because this is our history. It's not your fault, But it's not our fault either, because there's a hyper foreign that still has our campuses criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions raw. More people involved with child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart had roles with a principal being, with way worse than obscure pictures with shopping centers and malls people involved with their campuses and inter-campus, intra-campus, and with names next to them. Increasingly, institutional living on Harvard Hospital's campus in Hartford, Connecticut, and intelligence families like with buildings next to it are increasingly ones involved with the World Trade Center attack too. And with doctors putting fake transcripts, fake ties to people while their tactically delusions raw, and ones with badges, and there's ones with gavels too, putting their delusions and fake things in databases, collusions, and with changing and faking with actually digitally recorded. So there's a Judge Killian involved also with some digital crimes with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, and these are people that work as family members with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and their delusions mixed with that too. No, because this is psychiatry. These are the judges tied to them, involved with proven as roles recorded forced child abusers, leaders of kids, a bunch of people with the same house/s involved. And in other words, also like with all these falsified police reports, multiple police departments. You're going to see we're going to observe titles and identities, postures of values that are criminal and ceaseless natures of values. Achievements. They never had possession here or there. Suits and ties, counters and exceptions. Cannot afford the quality of fact, treatment nature necessary. They can't afford it to be in other people, let alone to protract. Necessary to reveal evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. Or we say, well, look at this, look at all these inventions. Get down. Watch what that caught them doing. Whole predicate acts methods masked upon the kids. It's the elderly homes. You think that's the elderly homes? That's not our means. That's not what we long. Better than free, we could do things. We're not doing it because of the economic talk. Our founders communicated too, not to leave out how they were forced to entertain private criminal enterprise, all the breaching methods, torture, extortion, fact treatment, nature, slavery methods. The World Trade Center attack was effectively to pull off cover-ups of how they already had roles with torture, extortion, fact treatment, nature, slavery. People at the World Trade Center, the court next to it, their roles interstates. Same ones involved here with the child abusers, leaders, and kids too. No, and they brought up body dumping spots at the same time. A serial killer. In other words, Pakistan, they have people incapable of speaking about culture properly, and there were proofs that they bully those kids, they make them attach strangers. They're putting fake motivations though with the military too, foreign and domestic, at that corner of South Steen Highway and Town Line Drive. Increasingly with these police departments at both cities, and collusions with the police that involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, refusing, they're switching names, forging names. These are people involved with Connecticut's roles, also interstates with the state judicial branch office and corrections offices, all kinds of wire crimes of the Wethersfield police, whole wire and FBI, whole wire crime methods, whole digital crime methods. They have the whole Congress and spots next to it used remotely since its inception. They're incapable of having a legitimate debate about suits and ties. Counters and exceptions as an array used to sense for the breaching method, and were not collusions with their logic, their nature of logic. The campuses are ill. Everyone was a victim / hyper victim. But everyone's also countering while blaming other things, others themselves, exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs. This are the lethal IDs. Force space nature is transfer is forced. This one to the beginning of the Quran too has a part that says all that matters is if one's going to be honest about that name. It doesn't say all that matters if you kill the person, because if you think you're dishonest about that. It says too, it qualifies that. It says, and don't pray in a mosque for the slightest reason if you don't agree with it. It doesn't say all that matters if someone prays even. It says all that matters is someone's going to be honest about that scientific value of the name. And a name is the invisible but still discernible. See, but they have reassigned what prayer means too. What, as a type of contemplation being led by how it is functional, being hyper invisible but still discernible. With yin yang, and alpha and omega are about. So A stands for alpha and O stands for omega. And M stands for mother, as the 13th letter of the English alphabet. But this is the same thing, the Chinese alphabet. Even if someone makes something up art, it is distinctly the order of the finite, the order of what is active or grouped or in the simultaneous. Everything's about the hyper simultaneous. Otherwise, it demonstrates to us. And we would have adapted to this. But that's what we have to measure. We have to pay attention to where and how so many industries are fake integrity. And while and how everyone's tactically denatured ground. Everyone's on systems tactical terror from nature. So we need to do things. If we want to stop people from getting a nuclear weapon, we have to admit too. Even nuclear, like the design of things needs nuclear, and everyone needs to be systems and jobs that are value nature systems tactical terror from how nature communicates with the difference of value. Know how value has relativity positive and negative simultaneously, the same way, and distinctly, but non-distinctly too, from how identity does. And we are a quality of diffusion, where we are already relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. We are right where it is about to be too hot or too cold, as Earth's a special difference. The only reason we have been in these systems so long and gotten away with it is because we're only one species body. Earth's a special difference, our own is forced from here. Probably to be negative value nature progression action in nature for the development of its identity of value progression, where it's also positive onto itself somewhere else. If we want to keep it going here, we have to be in the state being led by that, how it is functional, hyper invisible, but still discernible. We're not even led by a name. The name is only used to communicate about how we could discern it, like why we have more than one name for a verb. That's what we are discerning. Why we need to discern a main verb. We're looking to discern the identity of the hyper-visible but still discernible to an extent. And it comes simultaneously with its complete identity relationship to itself, the only increasing value of that. And we understand. People don't even have to complete sentences properly sometimes. Because in other words, we even know and understand things. Like there's a creature you never saw before. Never even read about it or saw it on television. You just understand. It's part of this system. You already understand about the seasons, but now everyone understands the seasons through in our systems, tactile terror. Everyone goes get some water in plastic bottles because we're on a ground tactile to nature. No one remembers other. And then religious messengers were born. Already the campuses were possessed. They were criminal re-engineerings of themselves, made and kept increasingly incapable of affording to be, let alone to protract. Short words of convictions proper by the sciences. The Connecticut Corrections Office and Judicial Branch Offices also has roles in all these other countries, intercities, from Wethersfield, Connecticut. A bunch of people at Central Connecticut State University. Now, this is hyper-evidential. This is another nature of evidence, but it's going to be used to show too how they've been putting all sides of cases in the formal law names, putting the same sequence shifts and collusions. See, those collusions are used to screen now, making them evaluate in the past, and making them needed in the future. This breaching method had a perfected use of all location differences, and consciously everyone rolls with and has differences systems tactical theory from its own. Again, showing us about why we have the same colorized, different colorized at the same time. And those colors are black and white. And we have that replaced. And what our founders communicated about, and what nature does at the same time. That's because we have the same problem here and there. We have means like this. We have things we agree on and don't need to pay the amount of money we're being charged for things. We don't do everything through the systems broke and pretending they're not. Not just broke. Criminally foreign influence / hypercriminally foreign influence. Tactical delusions wrought and pretending other. Incapable of getting away with it without self-firing roles with the databases side of it since before computers. We are in the same ancient trap. One way. So we have to think. So we can do great things, but we have to pay attention to how everything's tactically to nature and the grounded positions upon people. And where they are the worst, that's where they're most insidious too, are the campuses, but the exceptions too. Because the breaching method has everyone using exception nature, tactile theory from how it does. So we can fix the world.